So, hello and
Sure.
welcome to Military Mantra. In this interview, we have today Major Kamaldeep Singh Sandhu, who has served in Indian Army for more than a decade. And in this interview, we'll try to understand his journey of joining Indian Army, life within Army in the Parachute Regiment, and also various life lessons that he has learned within the service and beyond. So, thank you, sir, for coming on the interview and welcome.
Thanks, Akash. Nice to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Sir, if you could tell us, how was your journey before joining Forge? So, how did that look like, and when did you decide, and what motivated you to join the armed forces?
Well, I think along with a group of friends, collectively we decided quite early when we were still in school that we have to try for NDA, IMA, some kind of entry to join the army. And I don't remember having any other option, to be honest, initially. So I was still in year 10, class 10th, when I filled up my forms and everything. And I prepared to go for SSB interviews when I was not even prepared to go for SSB written exam, and I was not even qualified to do so. And anyway, in 12th, cleared the written exam and then went for the interview. Didn't make it in the first chance. And then I think it's 6 months later, you appear another written exam, cleared that one. And the second attempt, I made it through the SSB and then joined NDA. So, in between this, I did appear for engineering exams as well. It's not that there was absolutely no other option or we were totally focused on this, but the main effort or the main focus was only towards joining the army. And I think the motivation came from my dad had served in the Air Force, and then we used to watch these TV programs, very limited, whatever Doordarshan had to show. And just general glamour about the army. I personally did not have much knowledge about the army. There was no one in the army, in the family, who could guide you, tell you as to what does army comprise of, which is a good arm, which is a good service to join, or anything like that. So with no previous knowledge, it was just that sheer passion that one has to join the army. And I can say that a lot of kids of my generation then, and I'm talking about 25 years ago, joined with a similar kind of perspective. I mean, there was no unless you were from the army family and your father or grandfather had served in the army, and they're there to sort of guide you, and they have tasted a little bit of army life as a kid, have lived in the cantonments, have seen regimental life, unit life, and all. So they are still a little clued up. But people like me, I grew up in a small town, Rajpura. We used to live in a village very close to it, and there was not much exposure as far as the army life per se is concerned. So just out of sheer curiosity and passion and focus and hard work, one was able to go through the selection process and then join the NDA.
Okay. Sir, if you could tell us, how was your experience during the SSB process back then? How did you prepare, and what tips you would like to give to the aspirants who will be watching this on how do they prepare for it?
Yeah. So SSB was fun. First time was like everyone I was pretty nervous, and I was, in terms of preparation, we read some coaching books here and there as to what all tests, just to know what does SSB comprises of, and how to prepare for those individual tests. And thereafter, I attended the SSB, and the first attempt I didn't make it. But for me, that first attempt of failure was the best teacher. So lessons that I learned from that helped me prepare much better the second time. Although I attended some coaching classes as well for SSB, and they are a good introduction to the whole process. But once you go and see the whole thing with your own experience, you have the experience that you have at SSB actual, that is the best teacher. And some people are quite well prepared, and they make it in the first attempt. So I mean, they're quite I don't want to say they're lucky. I'm sure, I mean, they sort of present themselves very well. And in order to understand that, we have to understand what is the aim of SSB. What is SSB all about? So SSB is a structure to identify whether a person is fit to join the army or not, in terms of physical, mental, moral qualities, because army is an organization which is very different from our day-to-day organization that we work, and its demands, its expectations are very, very different from our normal places of work we go to in our day-to-day life, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 kind of a job, or even running a business. There is some overlap of qualities, and but the demand of being a leader, of commanding troops, is very different from other jobs that we do. Hence, hence the selection process is slightly different. I mean, everyone. I don't want to say is not capable. Everyone is capable of doing it, but there are some people who have the potential. They are easily trainable. So it is the trainability of you, the malleability in your personality that they're looking for in SSB. So as a result, the best preparation that you can do to prepare for SSB is practice and learn to be yourself. So if you are able to be yourself and present yourself genuinely, the kind of person you are, the kind of intellectual ability you have, the kind of intelligence you have, the kind of logical reasoning you have, the psychological aptitude that you have, if you're able to present that, it makes it very easier for the selecting officers to see through you and then make a decision whether or not you're fit for Fauj. If you are not selected in SSB, a lot of people try, give number of attempts, and they never make it through SSB. Maybe it's for their own good, because the SSB guys see that the qualities that you possess are not matching with those required in the army as a leader. Maybe you are fit to do well in other aspects of life, and it happens. A lot of people who sort of pass through the system and they sort of are able to fool the system and join the army or armed services. Later in life, they themselves regret that I'm stuck here for life and I'm not made for it. And I mean, the whole life then becomes a very painful kind of because then they're stuck there. And army services, it's a long kind of service unless you're lucky enough to leave quite early. And even now even short service commission is for 10 years. So you're stuck there for 10 years. You won't be able to leave, and it's hard. Slightly hard. The demands are much higher and expectations are much higher. So if you're not fit for the army, you will yourself suffer. Hence, SSBs are designed to make sure that army selects the kind of person that that it needs, and also to make sure that your personality is sort of malleable and it will be shaped in the army, so that when you're serving, you sort of have fun. You enjoy that environment. So it's a two-way kind of a thing. In terms of preparing for SSB, my advice is only know what tests are going to be there, prepare for them, properly, and try to be yourself. Try to express yourself, the kind of person you are. I mean, it's slightly contradictory. Like, you have to go and participate in group discussions there. You have to go and give a little extempore speech and all that for a couple of minutes. I don't know what the format is now, to be honest, but I'm talking about. It's not changed much. I mean, the requirement and the aim of SSB is still the same. It doesn't mean that since as a person, if you're an introvert, so you go there and sit there in group discussions, because then that is that shows that tomorrow when you become a leader and you're talking to your troops, you need to be able to stand up and speak and express yourself. You should be able to sort of organize your thoughts and communicate well to a group of persons or to your friends. And these are the basic qualities they look for. And this comes with practice. Leadership, all the qualities of leadership that we read and talk about, they all can come with practice. And practice them in your day-to-day lives. Simple things like, all the core values of being an army officer or soldier, integrity, honesty, truthfulness, respect for others, loyalty, I mean, you don't have to go and pretend there. You practice them in your day-to-day lives. Always speak the truth. Always be courageous. Always fight the fear. Always have that moral and physical courage to stand up for the right thing. Always have the integrity to do the right thing even when no one is watching. So practice them into day-to-day lives. It'll improve you as a person, and it'll help you in the SSB as well.
So nowadays we hear a term called OLQ, that is officer-like qualities, that there are some 15 OLQs that has been looked at in the SSBs. and candidates try to develop them. You also spoke about some of the qualities, but somewhere I feel, don't you think those 15 OLQs are relevant even to the normal citizens or even to the soldiers? And if yes, how can we develop so that we also get recommended?
Exactly. I mean, these are officer like qualities. I mean, these are leadership qualities, to be honest. And everyone can be a leader. You don't have to have an appointment or a rank to be a leader. You can be a leader in your own house, in your own room, and do things the ways they are supposed to be done, and practice and imbibe those qualities in your day-to-day life. If not, then you're sort of lying to yourself. Before lying to the system, you'll be lying to yourself. And I mean, you can't be 50% honest. Like, only you'll be honest only when you put on the uniform. That's not you. I mean, either you are 100% honest or you're not. Either you're 100% truthful person or you're not. So in your day-to-day life, you have to practice them, imbibe them into you, cultivate them into your thinking and psychology, and then only then you'll start enjoying the way of life in the army as well. Because over there, if you let's say fool the system, you pretend through SSB and you make it, and you join the army and you start wavering on these qualities, also like qualities. Uh, I mean, it, you will fail somewhere, and you will not only fail yourself, you will fail your whole uh, unit and subunit, and those are the men who look up to you as a leader, and you'll fail the whole system at the end of it. So it's the sooner you start practicing them, imbibing them in your lives, of course you'll become a good citizen, no doubt. But in coming years, I'm not saying that the corporate sector out in the civil world, they don't need those qualities. They need them much more than anyone else. So it's always, these are good qualities, and everyone should sort of practice them.
Yeah. So you went to National Defense Academy, then to IMA. So if you could tell us, some memorable incidents which you would like to share with the audience.
Well, NDA was good fun. 3 years. First 6 months were terrible. And of course, no privileges, nothing. And NDA, the seniors, the cadet appointments, they literally run the academy. And that's how you learn leadership qualities over there. Everything from like communicating in English, because initially in school, especially, in when I was growing up, although I studied in ICSE, CBSE board schools, in a friend circle, we would hardly speak English. Only when teachers would impose fine, that one was forced to speak a little bit of English here and there. But actual English, I started practicing when I went to NDA. And over there, seniors teach you everything from eating food to walking to dressing up to behaving to communicating and everything. I mean, so NDA has a great way of learning, and you learn a lot from your group. And I think when we joined in first term, we were all such useless characters who were acclimated from different parts of country. But by the time we passed out in sixth term, my course mates, and I'm so proud to say that, they won army pins, which is they did really well in their service subjects. They were one of the best map readers. They were good shots, good firers. And we, in my squadron, we won the camp plague. We came first in the camps in our final term. So gradually, from absolutely zero, we saw that improvement taking place in us. And really, while we were there, the squadron had never won banner for, I think, maybe once in history it had won the banner. And I think it was in my fourth term that we won the banner again. And so, yeah, I mean, those incidents are etched in the memory. I remember them very well. On all the time spent with my course mates. And yeah, I was a very, I mean, sincere kind of a person. I flunked probably library class once, and I got punished for that. So as a result, I couldn't even afford to be naughty there. So yeah, I mean, all good memories in NDA. A lot to learn. And that's the place that allows you to make mistakes. You learn so much about yourself, your personality, because we all grow up at different paces. Mm-hmm. Some kids are mature, some are not, and some are still learning. So you all look at each other, see at each other how everyone performs under pressure, under stress, and see the actual real behavior come out. And it's not only learning for others; it's a great learning for yourself as well. You see your own traits of personalities coming out. And so yeah, and then we went to IMA. Of course, IMA, it was just post Kargil at that time, and our course was cut short. The training was cut short by 6 months, and instead of December, we passed out in June, quite early. So we were quite happy that getting commission 6 months earlier. So IMA was good fun. Again, the training was rigorous because the course had been cut short, and we didn't spend much time. I remember in IMA, we used to live in this old accommodation, which now has been demolished and new accommodation has come up. So accommodation is really nice now. So we used to live in these quadrangles. And my room in winters, it did not have a window. And in summers, it did not have a fan. So so I still remember that it was good. I mean, at that time it seemed pathetic, but now when you look back to it, it was all good fun. I mean, yeah.
So if you could tell us, how did you decide to join the parachute regiment? What motivated you back then?
Well, the first instance that I had was, I think, when I was still in NDA, and two my squadron officers, they were both paratroopers. They just visited the squadron, and we looked at their uniform. They were absolutely fit, thin, smart, very smartly dressed, and the maroon berets and everything. And then you went to NDA, and you went to IMA, and then from the beginning you have to give your choice of arms, that what arm you would like to join. And not knowing anything, not knowing anything about any other regiment or any other arm, I just kept filling parachute regiment, and maybe Gorkhas was one of them because I've heard about them. Punjab regiment was another unit that I wanted to join, but in the sequence of in the order of priority, parachute regiment always remained top of my priority list. And then I was in the first block, and I was lucky enough to get my choice. So that's how I ended up in parachute regiment. Yeah, not all officers who opted for paras got paras, because the number of vacancies were limited then. But I luckily made it to parachute regiment. But then I didn't make it the first time. I was sent back to infantry. I failed my probation the first time. I went back to an infantry unit. So each parachute regiment officer has a parent unit as well, because if you fail your probation, you're not selected, then you're sent back to your parent unit, which is a normal infantry unit. And then after about a year, I decided to opt again before going for VIOS, and I opted for parachute regiment again, and then again I was sent probation to a different unit, and that second time I made it, and that's how I was selected.
Okay. So there is a lot of glamour around the parachute regiment, also about what happens in the probation. There are a lot of videos out there by Discovery Channel. If you could tell us, few experiences that you had in probation, which you would like to share.
Yeah, so probation is basically a mix of structured and non-structured training. Yeah, a lot depends on the team of officers which you are posted in the unit at that time when you join the unit for probation. I think the official duration is 90 days in both SF and non-SF units. And from my experience, it doesn't take that much to know a guy. The whole aim of probation is to see firstly that you're physically fit, because the parachute regiment duties, the operational duties that you do, they demand high level of mental endurance and physical fitness. Parachute jump in itself is a tiring kind of process. So let's say for example, you are going in an exercise or a battlefield, yeah. Infantry troops will move from in vehicles to their forward points or forward assembly areas or whatever, and they will march. So by the time when they actually come to FUP, they are relatively rested. They have not walked much. Gone are the days when infantry used to march long distances. Now we have army APCs, armored personal carriers that take troops right into the battlefield, and from there you start your battle. Yeah. In parachute regiment, and then of course infantry, they go together. They have a lot of logistics chains coming behind them, so they're constantly supplied with food, water, ammunition, whatever they need, and troops are constantly rotated. So since they move along with the frontage in an idle battle condition. In parachute regiment, the operational requirement is that you are dropped using a parachute into the battlefield. So now when we say parachute, the main parachute, you're wearing two parachutes in your parachute jump. The main parachute is about 14 kgs, the reserve is 7 kgs, and your rucksack, which carries everything, your food, ration, everything, your logistics, and mostly your ammunition, is about 30 plus kgs. Minimum is 30 kgs, and it goes to 40 kgs also, 40, 42 kgs also. So all this load you're carrying on your shoulder, and then you sit inside the aircraft. You have your food or whatever before you board the aircraft, and then the aircraft takes tactical routing. It flies about 2-3 hours, and then it drops you at the in the battlefield. So by the time you land on ground, you don't even know what was the last meal you had. You're thirsty, you're tired with carrying that load, maybe some are dehydrated, but that's when you land in the battlefield. And once you land, you drop your parachute, you pick up your weapon, and then you pick up your rucksack, and your actual battle actually starts. And then you march to your objective, which is 5 to 6 or 10 kilometers away, whatever it is, and then you capture it, and then you hold it for 2 to 3 days, because no resupply can come to you. For you're at least prepared to fight a battle for 72 hours, and you're on your own. So all this demands a high level of mental endurance and physical fitness levels. So that's why probation is designed to test whether a officer possesses all these qualities or not. The most important quality that is required in probation is the attitude of not giving up. Leave the basics aside. All the core values that I mentioned: integrity, loyalty, truthfulness, honesty. Those are the basics. Those are required anyway. I mean, the moment you're caught cheating, the moment you're caught, being untruthful, you're sent back. And no one likes, because all these officers who are selecting you have been selected in that way, and that's how they are fitted. They are fit in that team. That's what they like about each other. That no one has ever lied to each other, no matter how bad the situation or condition has been. And they have all fought combat together. They have all been in those stressful situations, and they have acted in the way they are supposed to act. Like good leaders. And when you're selecting new officers, those are the qualities you want to see in them as well. So besides those basic qualities of officer-like qualities, that core values that we talked about, physical fitness, yes, as I said, it's required. So you have to pass your speed marches, your BPT tests, your obstacle crossing, and all that kind of thing. And then the non-structured training that I'm talking about is like the officers will keep you busy. Officers, NCO, JCO, the whole Pelton, whole unit is testing you. And everyone is keeping. You're always under eyes. Someone else is always watching you, and you are being reported to your probation officer in some way or the other. I saw Saab doing this. I saw Saab doing this. I saw him sleeping. I saw him hiding, kind of a thing. So I mean, if you're not allowed to sleep, let's say for 2 to 3 days, and you're put under that much strain, and you're given so many tasks to be finished within sort of impossible deadlines, so you tend to break down. Then you tend to say, okay, I can't do this anymore. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to break you down. But I mean, the answer lies is not giving up. Keep trying your best. Keep doing your best. And physically, you have to be fit. I mean, not everyone has the fitness of the same levels. We all different, and that's acceptable. But as long as you meet the minimum standards, you should be good enough. Anyone who's fit enough to join the army is fit enough to join the parachute regiment. So all this myths that you need to be superhuman and you need to be super excellent timings and all that, that's all not true. So if you're fit enough to join the army, you join the army. You're fit enough to join the parachute regiment, and they expect you to push you a little more. Excellent timing in BPT for infantry is 25 minutes. They will say, yeah, come in 23 minutes, because because if at 21 years of age, if you're not coming in 23 minutes, by the time you reach 30, you will not finish in 25 minutes. And that will be a disgrace to the troops you're leading, because troops will be fitter than you then. So those are the requirements. So yeah, I mean, this is what probation all about.
So I've seen your videos of paratrooping. So if you could narrate how was your first paratrooping experience? How was it like jump out on an aircraft the first time?
Yeah, no, paratroop, it's great fun, great sport, and so it's a gradual training process. I think we do 12 days of ground training, and then we go for jumps. In ground training, they teach you everything, all tricks of the trade, how to. The maximum stress is on landing, and then to operate the emergencies and all that. emergencies in the air. And then they test you for your fear of height. So there's a fan test. There's a platform from where you jump, and then there's a controlled descent. You come down. So people who have fear of height, it's a very natural phenomena. It's not your fault. If some people have it, some don't have it. So now the thing is, people who have fear of height, they will just freeze and paralyze at that height, and they will not be able to jump. And as a result, the whole operation will be washed away. So hence, those people are filtered out there. If you have fear of height in fan test and or those kind of things, they are unable to perform, and then they are sent back. So once you pass through that, then they take you up for the air experience. You fly in the aircraft fully kitted and everything, parachute fitted and everything, and then they take you to the edge of the ramp with the ramp open, and you're standing on the edge, and they see how you behave there. They'll ask you your name, your number, or whatever, couple of questions, and see that you're still in your senses, standing at that height. And then finally, they pep you up and they take you for the final jump. And no matter, of course, no matter how much you prepare, first time is always scary. And I was like scared like hell. But then, being an officer, you're at number one of the stick. And if you hesitate, then guys behind you will also hesitate. So that day I just said to myself, no matter what happened, no matter even if you die today, you do not hesitate to jump, just jump out the aircraft. So as soon as the ramp opened, and it was a month of, I think, May or June in Agra, temperatures were like 45, 50 degrees and all that. Hot air coming in, and lips were dry, and the heart was in your neck already at the edge of the ramp. And then, moment they say go, you don't think, you just jump. And moment you jump, the parachute opens on its own. And then you just check the training is so repetitive that the training kicks in, and then you check all the parachute, do your drills, everything. And then you see you're coming towards the ground, and then you prepare to land. And moment you hit the ground, you just roll and get up. And then that's a great feeling that you see that about 30 seconds ago, I was in that aircraft and now I'm on the ground. And that gives you a lot of confidence. And then, of course, you do 4 more jumps in your basic course, and that gives you a lot of confidence. Yeah. So first time is always scary, but then you learn to deal with it.
Okay. Sir, when we talk about parachute regiment, a lot of aspirants want to become a para. It can be SF or the airborne units. So what makes parachute regiment so special?
I think firstly, it's a small regiment. The regimentation is very strong. As you said, that as we discussed, all officers are selected. So they are chosen once. So only the officers that you like, you keep them, and the rest are sent back. So as a result, you develop a liking for each other. The comradeship is very strong, not only within the unit, within the regiment as well. And then, you are wearing maroon berets. You stand out in a crowd. So when you stand out, you have to, have a good bearing. You have to look good. You have to act good, in all senses. So as a result, that becomes your way of life. And secondly, I think it's the equipment and training and the tasks, operational tasks that are assigned to you, and plus the parachute jumps and all. People aspire to do that. A lot of people do it as a sport, and we get to do it anyway. We wake up when you're in Agra, and the jumps are going on. I don't know if the things have changed now, because at that time you could actually get up, excuse yourself from PT. On every week, para fresher used to take place Monday, Tuesday ground training, and jumps on Wednesday and Thursday. So Wednesday morning, you pick up your bike, go to the ATS where jumps were taking place, get your name added to the list, pick up a parachute, go and jump, and be back by breakfast, have shower, and back in office. So before CO reaches office by 9:30, you are already in office, having done your parachute jump. So that was a luxury we had. And so these were, and you don't get to do this, in another arms or units. And these are small little privileges that we have. And I think that's, elite is a wrong word, but yes, they are small. They're slightly fitter than others. The expectations are more, so hence officers perform better. And everyone is chosen one. And, all these are the things that make them, I would say, a little different from others.
So you spoke about the equipment and weapons. So what was your favorite weapon back then?
Well, we operated with AK-47s a lot, and no doubt AK-47 is the best weapon I've ever used. Yeah.
Okay.
Folding butt, very easy to handle, very easy to maintain, very effective all the time, and easy to carry, as I said. And 30 rounds magazine, you carry enough adequate ammunition, and yeah, AK-47. I'll bet my life on AK-47.
So you have served in armed forces. So if you could tell us, 3 life lessons which you still cherish, which you have learned from the services, which you still use as well, what will they be?
Well, there are a lot of lessons, to be honest. But on top of my head, if I have to think of 3, I would say firstly, there is no shortcut to hard work. You have to put in hard work in order to succeed. You can't just sit on your chair and expect to win a lottery and get lucky and then achieve whatever you want to achieve in life. So you have to go through the toil, and one has to be prepared to go through the toil. Secondly, and hard work never goes waste. If you don't succeed the first time, the hard work that you put in for that sort of task will definitely come in handy somewhere else. So hard work has never, whatever I have put in, I might not have succeeded in that particular thing, but that same effort that I put in had come in handy somewhere else. It has helped me gain experience, or the lessons I learned from my failures or whatever. And third is never give up. Never give up, because life will throw you up and down n number of times. Even in the army, every few years the whole books were washed, the slate was cleaned, and you have to rewrite everything, rewrite the SOPs, rewrite the procedures, and you have to sort of reinvent the wheel every time we moved. And in terms of rank structure as well, I mean, yes, you are given authority, you're given responsibility, but you have to be humble, and not forget where you started from, and be prepared to start from scratch at any given time. So and a lot of us experience that. We climb in our careers, and then suddenly we have a fall, and then we don't know what to do. So, but then you can always restart. You can start from scratch at any stage and then rebuild yourself. It's not a problem. It can be done. So never be scared of starting from scratch. So yeah, these are the basic things that I still remember and still practice.
Okay. So National Defense Academy is, called as the cradle of leadership. Even, people from armed forces, they lead men into battles. So how did armed forces help you develop your leadership skills? And, what does leadership actually means to you?
Well, I love my time with my troops. When you are in command of men and you expect them to do things, for me personally, the best kind of leadership that I could offer them was leading by an example. So whatever I wanted them to do, I had to do it first, whether it was physically fitness, climbing a rope, or crossing a ditch, or doing well in academics, or scoring good marks in your courses of instructions, or dressing up, anything. Whatever I wanted them to do, I had to do it myself first, and then only then I could motivate them to do it. Even in patrols, going out in our CI area and all, as an officer, you have to be in the front. And I used to tell them that if something happens today, trust me, we will all come back. So, and we've all practiced it, we have done it. So that the troops have to gain that confidence in you, and that will only comes once you're leading from the front. And so that's the style that I've always practiced, and that it has worked for me.
Sir, I also know, after the armed forces, now you are also part of the UK Army. So how does that process looks like? How does one become or join UK Army? How does that work? If you can just put light on that as well.
Well, so now I've been living here for many years, and so if you meet the basic requirement criteria of any unit, not only just UK, any country that you go to, if you meet their joining criteria in terms of residency, citizenship, physical fitness, medical fitness, academic qualifications, if you meet all these criteria, you're eligible to join. And when I came here, it took me a few years to sort of meet those criteria, and as soon as I did, I applied as an experiment. And I kept clearing those tests, and I happened to join. And then I want to go to Sandhurst as well, just to see what the academy is all about. And we've all heard so much about Sandhurst and all our old retired journals, pre-1965, pre-1969, I would say. They're all trained in Sandhurst. So I wanted to go there, and I applied for the SSB selection here, and I got through, and then I went to go to Sandhurst as well. So one thing led to another, and sort of I'm happy to be here.
Okay. So since a lot of defense aspirants would be watching this interview session, so what would be your message to all those aspirants? You know, a lot of people try for SSB, do not qualify, they try again. And a lot of people are motivated at front by looking at, you know, the glamour around the armed forces, the special forces, after watching a lot of movies as well. But the amount of discipline and commitment is required. What would be your message to all those different kinds of defense aspirants who will be watching this?
I would say practice whatever is required in your daily lives. I mean, as I said earlier, you don't have to be in the armed forces to be a leader. Be a leader at your home, be a leader in your family, be a leader at your workplace, be a leader with your friends. When I say leader, it doesn't mean commanding troops. Leader means you working along with them, and practice those qualities in your day-to-day life. That will help you not only become good citizens, and later on, of course, if you do get selected in the armed forces, it'll come naturally to you. And don't give up. Keep trying. And hard work. There's no shortcut to hard work. As I said, you have to go through the whole rut. And and if you don't make it, it's not the end of the world. There's so many opportunities outside. There's so much that can be done. Armed forces is just one way of life. I agree that it's very lucrative. It's very sort of coveted. But when I look back to it, I wish I have tried more options, and maybe I could have done well somewhere else as well. But just because we were so focused at armed forces, and at that time, there was not much guidance available. The awareness level was not as much as your present generation has, and you guys definitely have more options in terms of becoming everything like YouTuber and social media. We would never even imagine that these could be jobs. Actually, you can actually make a living from these things. And so we had not many options. The top three of them were medical, engineering, armed forces. And the reason I joined was that after you get selected, there's a set path. You don't have to worry about your career. Your career is already set. You start earning by the time you're 21. You have a rank. You have a good status in the society. So yes, all these reasons. And then you join the armies, then you learn the way of life, and then you get along. Either you get along or you don't, depending on your personality. And then you start sort of enjoying that. So join Army for the right reasons, not just for the glamour or pays and perks. Do it for the right reasons. And if you don't make it, maybe it was not meant to be, and maybe you're not made for it, and it's better for you. So yeah, so if you go with this mindset, it'll always help you.
Thank you, sir, for your time. You told us a lot of things about the parachute regiment, the army life, a lot of qualities which aspirants can develop and focus on. So thanks a lot again, sir, for your time and coming on this interview. Thanks again, sir. Jai Hind.
No, thanks. It's always a pleasure. Thanks, I could help.
Thanks a lot, sir.